Professor Edna Miola. Who is an associate professor at the Federal University of Technology in Paraná, Brazil. She has been here for a while, together with her husband, on sabbatical, and been affiliated with the Quello Center, doing work on the use of social media by governments in Brazil and in the United States. And today she will present part of her research on how Brazilian governments use social media platforms. She is affiliated at her university with the Department of Language and Communication, Integrated Program of Planning and Public Governance. She's also involved in quite a number of other activities that I don't, for the sake of time, I'm not going to list here. But she's particularly interested in digital democracy and government communication on social media. And the research that we'll hear about today is part of that larger project. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ian. I'd like to thank Quello Center, Department of Media Information, Professor Michael Stern, and also obviously Professor Johannes Bauer and Keith Hampton for having me here for all this time and providing me with so many resources that I can use to develop my research. So I also thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and share some ideas about Brazilian cities and their use of social media. This is the research I have been developing in MSU, but I also have intention to research about US, but at this point, I didn't find the same kind of data that I have from Brazil. And maybe you have some ideas to share with me about how to get this data. So, my research questions are, which social media platforms do Brazilian local governments most often use? Which communication activities do local government perform on social media, and how often they perform these activities? And to what extent are demographic, economic, political, and technological factors associated with social media platforms use? And to do so, I collected some data from three institutions in Brazil, actually. The Brazilian Institute of Geography and Statistics, that is a research bureau, public agency, and they provide several data on every aspect of political and economic and social life in Brazil. And they have this research they conduct every year called MUNIC. That is MUNIC from municipalities. And I use the data from 2019 that has some questions about communication and technology used by the city halls. And also I use a second data set from IBGE. The data set, they explain how are the economic activities in each of the cities. So I'm sorry, PB is gross domestic product. And I also use a variable from the Ministry of Education that they conduct evaluation and assessment of all students in public or private schools, but I select just the scores that students from public schools sponsored by the cities, that how they performed in mathematics and Portuguese tests. So I made a mean of actually, I use the IDAB. That's the score the ministry provides from each city and each school. So the last database I used was the Superior Electoral Court. That is the high authority that regulates the elections in Brazil. That is similar to Supreme Court, but it deals only with electoral process. And they provide data on each election Brazil have. And I use the data of the previous city election that elected the mayors that I was evaluating. And they provided me the electoral turnout of 2016 elections. And I also use the data about the which cities were managed by female mayors. But this data was not so important for me. So I use as unit of analysis the Brazilian cities, and Brazil has 5,570 cities, and all of them were in the data set. And as variables, I checked the geographic as regions and states, demographics as population, education as the IDEB index that I told about, the illiteracy rate, gross domestic product, and gross domestic product per capita, the city resources that the city hall have available to itself, and also they provide to the citizens. So the number of public servants working for the city hall, the number of the public servants per inhabitants, the rate of this, if the city collects municipal taxes, if they have IT sector and data center available to the city administration, and if they offer citizens digital inclusion programs and actions, and provide public access Wi-Fi connection. The next item are the politics variables, that is the electoral turnout and having a woman as a mayor. And finally, I select some questions about transparency, such as if the city keeps an online portal of transparency, if they keep online their institutional website, if they publish their budget spending in real time. There's a law regarding this in Brazil that all the governments and the public institutions have to publish all the information in the most of 2 days after the spending. So it should be up to date, but not always they are. And finally, if they have an internal control sector that is responsible for ombudsman and controllership and audits and this kind of activities. So some facts about Brazil and Brazilian cities. This is the Brazilian map, and the colors represent the 5 different regions. And we have 5,570 cities distributed in 27 states by the 5 regions. And the estimative population in 2021 is around 213 million inhabitants. A brief description of the households include that most of them, 99%, almost 100, have electric power. Roughly half of them have computer or tablets, but most of them have access to internet, around 83%. But most of this access is provided through cell phones. So most of the people use mobile devices to access internet. And we have TV in 96% of the households. And this number is quite the same in the last 20 years. As the economy, the gross domestic product per capita of citizens is around $7,000 a year. And our rate of illiteracy of people who is older than 15 years old is 6.6%. And we have 124,840 elementary schools in the country. These cities usually are the ones responsible for the elementary education. So here are some of the results. The Facebook is widely the most frequent platform used, and around 83% of the cities use Facebook, and Instagram is also owned by the Meta company, the same as Facebook, and is the second most used with 39%, or 2,150 cities. YouTube from Google Alphabet is used as a video repository by 18%. And most popular mobile message app in Brazil is WhatsApp, that's also owned by Meta. And maybe you heard about our WhatsApp issues during elections. And recently, the WhatsApp platform made a deal with the Supreme Court to stop some kind of mass sharing of content. But I won't analyze the content of WhatsApp, just the use. In fact, the city halls don't adopt so often than the people use, but the politicians are heavy users of WhatsApp, also the population in general. And regardless of being less popular, Twitter is still employed by 7% of the cities. That were the 5 social media. I performed some logistic regressions to check which one was which aspects influence their use. And I would like to note that 16% or 890 city halls don't have any platform, don't use any platform on social media. That is not that's not a small number. But so regarding Facebook, I put some triangles in the states that are use most and use less, but I will discuss such as Maranhão, Piauí, Mato Grosso, and Paraná are states that use less than expected, and Ceará, Rio Grande do Norte, Bahia, and Minas Gerais. I think I forgot to put the green arrows in this map. Sorry. They use more, but regarding the resources, the higher the gross domestic product, higher the use of social media, or specifically Facebook. And having IT sectors, data centers are positive predictors of this use, and also providing digital inclusion programs and public Wi-Fi connection. Also, keeping the transparency portal is positively associated with Facebook use. You're not seeing, but this is Instagram. So Instagram is more often used in the Northeast and in the North region of the country. And I will not provide the specifics, but there are the states that use more and use less. The higher the population of the city, most probably they will use Instagram in the city hall. And also the use of Instagram is positively related to gross domestic product. IT sector have been public Wi-Fi connection, and also regarding to transparency, providing real-time budget information. Okay, YouTube. YouTube has a sorry, can I just check here because I'm not so sure that I. Okay, well, YouTube is less used in the South and in the Northeast, and sorry, in the South and POE and Amazonas states. And YouTube is more often used by city halls in Rio de Janeiro. And the use of YouTube is also associated with the economics and technological and human resources that the city administrators have. This is the only time that human resources per capita is significantly associated with the use of a social media. I think maybe one explanation is because YouTube requires more specialized human resources, and also to produce content to YouTube is a specialized activity. So maybe this is the reason. But I would like to highlight that human resources per capita is a variable that works differently than I expected in other cases. I will provide some information about the data that I didn't bring to you, but aspects such as the portal of transparency, internal control website, and keeping the website, institutional website online, all these activities, and also some aspects such as the smart city package are negatively related to the number of public servants working per capita. So my guess is that the technological resources made the city halls more efficient, and they need less people. But also it is because the bigger cities have less public servants per capita. So the smaller cities use less these resources, and also have a higher rate of public servants per citizen, per groups of citizens. Yeah, that's it. WhatsApp it's kind of interesting, this aspect of the politics. That's the only social media that is related to electoral turnout, but it's inversely related. So Facebook is more used by cities in which the citizens go less to the ballot to vote. This is information that has to be discussed further, because I have no explanation for this yet. Yeah, education is important to use WhatsApp, and also the economic aspects of the city. Twitter is the less used of the list that I've present you, but and also has less my models have less power of explanation about Twitter. I can see that just having an IT sector is positively related to the Twitter use, and also bigger cities has populations higher numbers also use more Twitter. So, about the frequency of posting on social media, let me just see. Okay, 28 minutes. Most of the cities which have a social media profile or social media site platforms used to publish in daily basis. That makes sense because if you have a profile or a page in Facebook, Twitter, or any other platform, you have to provide content in an updated way. Né? So most of these cities actually use very often, but when we see the relation test that it presents when I performed a linear regression with the scale of frequency of posting, we can see that all sorry, this should be green. This should be green. The triangle should be green. All they relate positively with population, gross domestic product per capita, having a data center, having programs of digital inclusion, and the participation in elections, and having the portal of transparency online. The activities that the city perform on social media are mostly the ones that we can say that there are one-way communication, such as posting news about the city hall and advertising services and publishing, airing public interest campaigns. So most of the cities that use social media use for this kind of activity, but also they quite well respond to citizens' comments and questions. The less activity, less use activity, less use they perform with social media are conducting public consultations or polls. That is quite frustrating for who expects to social media be a two-way communication. And the reasons we can see that posting news about City Hall are not related so strongly with any of the main variables. It's only we only can see that the states of and the cities of the north and the southeast are more prone to posting news about the City Hall, and the ones that provide public Wi-Fi connection to the cities. About the advertising services and performing public interest campaigns, we can see that north and northeast cities use less, and the state also of Tocantins and Rio de Janeiro use less than the others. And education and digital inclusion programs are positively related to the use of social media. The action of responding to citizens' comments and questions, and I can say that the users, Facebook users, use this kind of activity a lot, because when we see the postings of any public agency, we see a lot of people questioning the government, and also the public servants using this kind of thing to direct questions to their employers. But we can see that this activity that is the third most often that in this list is performed more for cities that have larger populations and provide digital inclusion programs and have this kind of structure that performs audits and internal control. The last variable is the conducting public consultation or polls. This activity should be very common because we have several laws in Brazil that requires a lot of activities and public policies to be vouched by public meetings and public consultations, but the social media platforms are not used for this purpose in this with this information I have. So the Southeast and South region cities, and also the cities of Acre, Maranhão, and Paraíba, 3 states that are in the Northeast region of the country, use less. And also the population and digital inclusion programs are important to explain this kind of use. But still, I highlight this is the less frequent use of social media. So some concluding remarks, concluding remarks. I think that the social platforms adopted more recurrently or more often by the Brazilian cities are the social platforms provided by Meta, the Facebook company, being Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp the most common, and also the Google's YouTube. But YouTube has a particular characteristic that it aggregates some content that cities produce to make announcements, to publish about in the conclusion of construction and things like that. And the communication activities more commonly performed are the kinds of the one-way communication, such as campaigning, provide information about services, and also making news about the cities. And I also noted that this kind of news usually, I am saying this because of my other part of my research, that the public institutions usually use this kind of content, news to give visibility to the mayor, to the secretary, and all the government actors. So in other research I conduct, I can see this as a kind of instrumental use of social media and public communication. The aspects that I analyzed regarding demographic, economic, political, and technological factors, I would like to highlight education and having economic resources, or the cities being rich, and the technological resources, especially the ones that are necessary to the city administration, and also the ones that they provide to the city, such as broadband, Wi-Fi, public access, and programs that provide the digital inclusion, such as providing broadband to the schools. This is the kind of program that is most often provided by the government. Last, I select some of the variables that does not explain the local government practices on social platforms. That is the city collection of municipal taxes, and I thought that having more money coming from the taxpayers would help the city halls to implement such programs and such practices of communication, but it doesn't have any impact on my data. And having proportionally bigger teams working for the city hall is not that important, except for YouTube, but in any other case, this variable is relevant or significant. Also, being governed by a woman is a variable that I actually excluded from the final model because it wasn't important to any of the to explain any of my dependent variables. And finally, keeping other digital resources updated, especially the website of the city, the institutional website, has nothing to do with performing any activity on social media. So that's the summary of my data. Thank you for listening. I am open for questions.
Bring the Zoom people back.
If you just hit stop share.
Yeah. We'll do it too. Okay, of the group online. So the floor is open for comments, feedback, questions. Discussion. Let's go ahead, please.
Hi, Edna, congratulations. My name is Marcos. I'm visiting scholar as well in the School of Journalism here. I'm from Brazil as well.
Small world.
Congratulations for presentation. I enjoyed. Have you been studying this data across the time as well, and have you realized some results related to, for example, transparency across the time?
Not at this time, but regarding social media, the only poll that brings this kind of information about social media is the 2019 poll of the IBGE. Before that, they only asked about having computer at home and having internet connection, broadband connection, and having cell phones, this kind of thing. Because the last time that they asked these questions was in 2009. So social media were not so popular at that time. But about transparency, we have some other transparency in the cities. We have another research that analyze these variables such as GDP and population, about comparing this to a ranking that the public ministry, I don't know how can I say this external authority that check the government actions, they evaluate all the cities, this transparency portal of the cities, and they they make this rank, and we compare this data with some aspects such as population, GDP. Can you help me?
Yes, to start with an article that we wrote together in partnership, and basically we try to compare the performances of all the Brazilian cities, more than 5,000 cities, before and after a report issued by the public prosecutor's office. So in Brazil, the public prosecutor's office, they were keeping a close eye in how our cities are offering e-transparency to citizens in order to favor a public control of the public money. And it's really interesting because in 2015, when we had the first edition of this report, most of the cities were doing pretty bad. But 1 year, and so once these cities were doing pretty bad, the public prosecutor's office sent a letter to each one of these municipalities saying, if you did not take, if you don't do anything to make it better, we will sue you. You will be held accountable, and maybe you will even face prison. and so both of the mayors, and so all the mayors said, we have to pay attention to this, otherwise I will not be here. I will not be here next election. And so it's really interesting how the quality of these e-transparency websites were really improved. So this is what Edna is talking about when she between 1 year and another, they had a huge improvement. So.
Really, the agency had gave them all the cities around 3 months to comply. So they have 3 months just to rearrange all their information and make it updated.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, it's because in Brazil we have a different configuration of our political system. Here in the US, you have townships and cities and counties, but the states have a lot of power in running how politics work. In Brazil, even small cities are considered independent. So we have a federation, like we have the federal government, the states, all these 27 states, and these 5,500 cities. And such cities, since they also get federal money directly, they receive federal money directly from Brasilia, it's our capital city. And so the public prosecutor's office, it has a national coverage. And so even if they are in Brasilia, they can approach and they can demand things from even small cities, because there is a different it's a different political system. So this is what is happening. I'm not sure if here in the US, the states, the federal government has a kind of agency that is supposed to follow and to monitor how small cities offer online tools, digital democracy online tools. But in Brazil, yes, there is this kind of our 1988 constitution created this public prosecutor's office, and they are doing a good job.
Is Jessica, is your hand raised, or is this just an icon on your screen?
The mouse is on the screen.
Oh, it's the mouse, okay. Oh, yeah.
I have a question. I was wondering, I'm an ethnographer, so whenever I see big data sets like this, I always think about the outliers and what could be interesting happening in the outliers. Were there any outliers that you saw in your data where there was maybe tons and tons of sort of social media activity where you didn't think there was going to be any, like maybe very remote rural communities where there was a lot of activity?
Yeah, regarding social media, I didn't find any outliers, but I tried to identify cities where most of the people live in rural areas, but with the data of IBGE, I wasn't able to identify this. They have a kind of classification, a kind of classes of cities, but it's also regarding the size of population.
Mm.
So it's a form of aggregation of the variable population. The outliers, of course, are in the other aspects, such as economics and population. Of course, São Paulo is the city that always was higher than anyone. But I don't see really most differences regarding social media. Maybe I have to look more.
Yes.
I really like this presentation. I think this is really interesting work. I'm curious, can you talk a little bit more about your process of looking at the different content that these governments were posting. Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
No, thank you. This is not the case that I analyzed here, but I have a research about the Ministry of Health, the Federal Ministry of Health, and also the candidates to a local election. And I have some knowledge, unsystematized, about this also, because I am very interested in how the governments, as I said, instrumentalize public communication, how they use to gain visibility and in next steps to be re-elected. So this is a very, very common use of public communication in Brazil. And when I say public communication, I'm saying government communication in a broader sense. And we see that, for example, the research I made about the Ministry of Health, I was analyzing the how the ministry publish content about the strike of Aedes aegypti crisis. That is the mosquito related to Zika. At the time, they were just learning that this mosquito was related to Zika. And we had a big strike of epidemic of Zika at that time. So I analyzed how the Ministry of Health addressed this issue during 4 months. And I discovered that a lot of the content that is important to people, such as information about disease, information about medical services, are kind of contaminated with instrumental use of or political use of this, such as the Minister of Health announcing public policy, and the post was written to highlight his role in this policy instead of the results that are expected. And I analyzed, in that case, I analyzed how these choices of content impact in the Facebook metrics. And I saw that the people really reject this kind of content. Even if the information is important to them, they look for symptoms and other information about the disease. When the Ministry of Health was being praised, or the ministry were being praised, the people interacted less with this content. So they didn't share or didn't comment or even didn't like. So it has I think it's interesting because we can prove that people can identify this kind of use, this political use of communication, and they reject this kind of approach, even though all the governments and all the mayors, governors, and the president especially use a lot of this kind of strategy to promote themselves. And it happens in the social media platforms, but it has been happening since the invention of the radio. Our first experience in national radio was conducted by the president Getúlio Vargas, and it was a creation of a program that was broadcast to all the country, and it was called the Hour of the President. So he can address the nation at the same time in all the country. So we have a long history of this kind of instrumental and political use of communication. I don't know if I answered your question, but you can feel free to ask again.
I have also a question. First, thanks for this presentation. I also find it very interesting and useful. My question is about like the final slide with the findings of your study, when you highlighted some important like ideas. My question is, you told that there was no relationship between updating their websites and their social media activity, if I get it right. And my question is, in the context of your study, does it mean that they update their social media, like posts only, like, but not update their websites, or they create like different content on their website and on their social media platforms? And the second question was about like the frequency of posting social on their social media platforms. I remember like the graph that showed that most of the organization post daily on their social media accounts. I just wonder, like, did you look into the like what type of organizations, like technological, IT fields and others, like what kind of organizations mostly share or post on social media on a daily basis? And sorry if you told about it and I missed. So
No, actually,
I think like
I just analyzed how the variables such as the state, the region, and the population, all this kind of. Sorry. Okay. Sorry. I remember. Now I showed linear regression, where explained that population, GDP, and having digital inclusion programs, they all related positively with the frequency of the posting on social media. But I'm not sure if it was the question that you asked for. Is it-
yeah, actually, I was like interested in organization types and the frequency of posting on social media. Like,
Well, all the units of analysis were just the city. So I don't distinguish between secretary of health secretary and education department. I just know about the city as the city hall.
yeah.
So the question was, are the websites of city halls online? So this variable, for example, asked them if the site was on, website was on. So it's a dummy variable, yes or no, was on or not. And most of them are on. And most of them are the transparency portal are on, and most of them use social media, but there are differences that impact that result in this different kind of use. I'm not sure if I answer your question correctly.
Thank you.
I thought, Keith, did you have maybe a question? Otherwise, I'll have.
Go ahead, by any means. My question was going to be about a comparative analysis about how this looks relative to, say, other countries in Latin America. But Johannes, I mean, if you have another question, please.
Well, Edna, did you have thoughts on Keith's?
Sorry, I didn't. I don't have data on the other countries of Latin America, but I would like to have. If you know how to get it, I'm up to.
Yeah, I don't know. I was curious in particular relative to, say, Argentina, which would seem like a fairly reasonable comparison, but I don't know of the data source. So.
Yeah, I think it's very difficult to find the kind of data set that IBGE provides us. We have thousands of questions in the same data set that can be comparable with various aspects. The same data set that I analyzed brought several questions on governance, for example. Which activities all the internal control structure perform, if they have consortium with other cities or other states, if they provide participation on human rights and councils, and well, it was huge. most of the time I was trying to figure out which of them were I would be able to process. So
That's wonderful data. I wish we had something comparable here. So thank you very much.
thank you.
So I had a couple of questions for you. I mean, one, I mean, you also, if I remember it correctly, right, you also study other types of media, and from your at least casual observation, is social media use a complement to having other types of press releases, or has activity shifted from, you know, from press conferences and the more traditional types of communication with the public now to social media? Is there anything you can tell about? I mean, you don't collect it in your data, but I'm just wondering, you have all this experience, right? I mean,
Yeah, I feel that public broadcasting is very, very important in this aspect in Brazil. But it's also an example of instrumentalization, because we have TV and radio stations in all the country and all the states, and we also have a very powerful national station that should be our own BBC, but it was created by Lula da Silva government. But since the beginning, it's also used with this kind of bias. And I feel that until Bolsonaro, the TV and the agency news and the radio stations used by governments were more important than social media or any other kind of public or government content. But now I think social media is guiding all the strategies that politicians and also the citizens use to engage with public institutions. And I don't know where it will take us, but
so let me just throw out a couple more thoughts. One is, would it be possible? I mean, this is all sort of on the supply side, right, of messages. And in the social media space, you probably would be able to actually also collect information on at least numbers of users and numbers of shares, and maybe get an additional sort of perspective from that. I mean, sort of our communities who post more, are they more you know, frequently liked, or do they have larger user bases? And then if you could do this, there's probably other variables that one could look at in the continuation. Maybe one would be, what's the level of trust, for example, in public policy that people have, right? I mean, maybe that's information. I remember I think you were at Pablo's talk, right? I mean, last year, and he talked about Argentina and kind of the decline in trust in public institutions, and decline in media, right? I mean, and maybe there's sort of additional really interesting research issues that you could relate to what you have right now. This is really fascinating project.
I wish I had the funding to do it.
Yeah, so just gonna convince somebody.
But it's really interesting, yes. The level of trust probably is related to the research that I talked about, Ministry of Health, and how to deal with the health crisis. And as far as I know, the public in general don't trust the government communication. But we can see now that around the government profiles on social media, there are a lot of people praising the government because they assume this is a space of political battle, and they go there to reinforce their support for the government. Other people don't even follow this content, and they don't share, obviously, but probably they won't even see this content because of the algorithms and how you select the content you see. So maybe we are living really in bubbles, as described, because the Twitter profile of the government that Twitter is now very popular in federal government. And we see lots of people struggling and struggling not is fighting for the versions of the reality. And for sure, this has a big, huge impact on public trust. And
Yeah, interesting. Well, let's see how the Twitter story continues with Mr. Musk potentially taking. Any last thoughts, questions?
Yeah, a question and a comment. As Edna said, Brazil has 5,000 cities, and we have cities with 2,000 people living there, and a city like São Paulo, where we have 12 million people living there. So it's a huge difference. And it's interesting to realize that in some poor regions in Brazil, we never had a media system as we know. For example, we don't have local newspapers, and even in big cities, newspapers are not so well. They are known, but they are not the sales are really bad. They have bad results. So this is interesting because in most part of the country we don't have a media system like a local newspaper or local TV. Everything we have are national TV channels in such small cities and local radios, but no newspaper, And it's interesting because social media, it's like if for such small cities, they had skipped this stage, this newspaper and TV stage, and they went directly to the social media age. And it's thrilling to realize, for example, how social media, Facebook, but now WhatsApp, this is what really galvanizes people to participate politically, because they are the environments where people can share gossips about politicians, for example, about families of politicians. And so, oh, here's the picture. I saw that our mayor just bought a new car to his son, but where did he get the money from? So this kind of stuff is really interesting in Brazilian small cities. And it's most interesting because just to make a connection with the Quello Center research agenda, we don't have cable in Brazil in such poor regions. Just to give you some context, in Brazil, not even large cities have cable in some neighborhoods. And this is completely different from what we have here in the US. I remember that I live in Missouri, and a friend, I live in St. Louis, Missouri, and a friend took me to visit the Ozarks Lake, and they have a house in the lake. And he said, oh, yes, we have cable here. And I said, what? But it's so far from everything. But you have, yeah, we have cable since the 70s, the 80s. But Brazil, we didn't have this kind of infrastructure. So people used to use a lot of WhatsApp and Facebook and social media, but maybe they do it mainly using cell phone antennas and this kind of stuff. I know that we don't have more time, but I will ask you just a quick question. Do you have any idea of why states which are so close geographically, economically, technologically, like Maranhão and Ceará, why do they have so different performances when we consider this? Because apparently they have they are in the same region, the poor region. They have the same level, similar levels of education. They have similar levels of demographic data. But what explain? I know that you are not in this stage yet, but do you have an idea? I suggest.
I don't. I wish I know, but maybe the answer is where Johannes' question. Oh, sorry, colleague question about the rural areas, because in particular the two states that you compare are very different from this point of view. Maranhão has most of the regions are rural. Most of the cities are mostly rural cities, while Ceará has lots of big cities, very urbanized cities. Maybe this is a thing, but I don't know. Yeah, I hope I know.
That's maybe something that you could build into your empirical estimations, right? Sort of some your urbanity or rurality or something. So it makes sometimes what we see, let's say in broadband research, because you alluded to this, is that sometimes the presence of some technology leader, right? Somebody who takes the initiative is really can have really ripple effects on the whole place and the whole region.
I have guessed that the IBGE provides the detailed data on economics, and they say if the city has which part of the gross domestic product comes from agriculture and which part comes from industries, but I'm not sure if it will work, because we have big states that are high technology in agriculture, such as Mato Grosso do Sul, Mato Grosso, some Goiás, Paraná, and they have large areas of large rural areas, but they are very developed in terms of economics and technology, different from some states such as Maranhão, especially the Amazon area. So I'm not sure if this is the way to find out.
Well, I think we have reached the end of our time, but to hang out some more, grab some more food for the road if you wish. And thank you again.